Part 50. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 491. Chapter 491. What happens if someone is missed? The emperor was a sensible monarch in the whole matter. Even though he almost injured the dragon's body, he did not blame the ministers. Instead, he rewarded the ministers generously and encouraged them to give advice. The Li family, the Lu family, and the Kui family are affectionate and righteous. In a situation where everyone thought they were destined to die, they ran around and never left, and received countless praises. Even if the rebellious son got married and people gossiped about him, most people still praised him for his kindness and righteousness. He survived the catastrophe and would be blessed later in life. Only the Wen family is mentioned with contempt by everyone. They have all been thrown on their heads, such as refusing to save people even when they are dead, and being poisoned by tigers and not eating their seeds. Even fools should figure out what is going on. Conspiracy, this is the conspiracy against the Wen family. The father and son had just found Kui's Wangzi, but the traitor was not there at all. They can only run to Broken Gold Beach again. Today, they must mess up this marriage. Otherwise, the Wen family will completely lose their reputation and will not get any benefits. As long as we can coax the traitor back to the Wen family and hold him in our hands again, we can always find a way to make him obediently devote himself to the family. If that doesn't work, it would be fine to let him marry the junior sister of the Kui family. From now on, maybe the Kui family, Lu family, and Li family can also be used by the Wen family. The father and son's abacus beads are crackling and extremely shrewd. Unfortunately, things are unpredictable, so they were happy too early. As soon as the carriage got off the stone bridge, 7 or 8 soldiers suddenly came out from the roadside and stopped the carriage. The charioteer was startled, quickly reined in the reins, and asked loudly, "Who are you? Why did you stop the carriage?" A soldier asked, "Whose carriage is this? What's going on in the new village?" Chang Sui did not dare to answer, but fortunately the small window was opened. Wen Junyan frowned and glanced at the soldiers, saying, "We are the Wen family in Zindu. We are here to visit Uncle Li today." Wen family, the soldier's face lit up when he heard this, and he quickly shouted to the brothers behind him, "Hurry up and work, we've finally arrived." The other soldiers also laughed and stepped forward. The two of them pulled the reins and pulled down the long tail. The two of them opened the car door, grabbed old Mrs. Wen and Wen Junyan, and dragged them directly under the bridge. Mr. Wen and Wen Junyan's faces turned pale with fright, and they were more angry. Mr. Wen yelled and cursed loudly, "What are you going to do? Are you going to kidnap the imperial official in broad daylight? Is there any royal law?" Wen Junyan was timid, but he also shouted, "What on earth do you want to do? Do you want money? We can discuss it if we have anything to say." It's a pity that the soldiers ignored them at all. Not only did they drag the two people into the creek under the bridge, they also drove the carriage down and hid them in the bridge hole. At this time of year, there has long been no melted snow water flowing into the river, and there has been little rain recently, so the banks of the river are almost half dry. At this moment, hiding a carriage is so easy. Mr. Wen and Wen Junyan were completely frightened when they saw this. This is definitely not meant to rob wealth, let alone sex, it can only be life-threatening. Sure enough, several soldiers pulled their hair and pushed their heads into the water. The cold river water is not as biting as winter, but it is definitely not warm. And it is even more terrifying if it is poured into the mouth and nose. The two of them grabbed their hands and feet in fear, but this only made them choke even more. Just when they thought they were about to die, they were pulled out. The two of them coughed desperately. For the first time, they felt that the air was so sweet, and breathing was so blissful. One of the soldiers asked with a smile, "Tell me, why did you come to the new village? For what?" Old Mrs. Wen was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously replied, "Come to find that traitor in my family." Before he could finish speaking, his head was pushed into the river again. The soldier smiled evilly and looked at the frightened Wen Junyan. "How can Mr. Wen, a good man like you, be an unfilial and rebellious son?" The soldier escorting Wen Junyan responded, "Yes, Mr. Wen is a good man. Last time he came back, he drank and joked with us, but he never disliked us roughnecks." Wen Junyan's eyes widened as he finally understood why they had this disaster. While he still wanted to speak, the soldiers pushed him into the water. The father and son fought for it, washed their heads and faces in the river, and drank to their fill before being thrown on the bank by the soldiers. This time, when the soldiers asked questions again, the father and son became much more honest and well-behaved. Old Mr. Wen was coughing as if he was going to die, but he didn't dare to reply. "Ahem, I'm here to see my second son. He's going to marry into the Kui family today and be his son-in-law. I'm not happy. Ahem, I want to stop him. Not allowed to get married." Wen Junyan was afraid that after his father finished speaking, he would be sent to drink water again if he didn't explain, so he also responded, "Yes, we are just here to stop my brother from getting married. It's too embarrassing for him to marry into the wife. We really don't have any malice, no want to harm others." Several soldiers were waiting for their words. Immediately one of the soldiers jumped up and shouted, "Brothers, the Marquis guessed it right, these two guys are here to cause trouble. I will go back and report the news. Maybe we can make it in time for the banquet, just wait until I bring you some delicious food." After saying that, he turned around and ran away, causing the remaining soldiers to shout. The leading soldier threw a stone into the river and laughed and cursed, "This kid is really a monkey, he actually got the better of him. That's right, I hope he has some conscience and doesn't eat enough without even giving us a bone." A soldier swallowed greedily and complained, "It's all the fault of these two prodigal things. If it weren't for stopping them, we would have been drinking and eating meat in the courtyard for a long time. That's it, give them some more water, there are so many people who are not doing their business, but they have to come and disturb Mr. Wen's wedding banquet. Yes, yes, I almost broke my head in order to follow the Marquis back. I was just waiting for a good meal to join in the fun, but they ruined it. Pay for our chicken legs, pay for our braised pork." The soldiers became more and more angry as they talked and pushed Old Man Wen and Wen Junyan into the river again and again and again. The leading soldier lay on his back on the river bank, holding weeds in his mouth and crossing his legs. From time to time he said, "It's almost done. Be careful, if you really drown, it won't end well." I don't know how long it took, but Mr. Wen and his son were finally thrown to the shore. Their bellies were as bloated as toads. The two of them felt so regretful that their intestines turned black. Why do they come here to find trouble? Isn't it better to just stay at home? They counted the Li family, the Lu family and the Kui family, but they forgot that there was also a Xinting Hao. How could the god of death, who chopped down barbarians like weeds, show mercy to them? It's still a day of 4 updates. Huahua comes to hold legs again. Tickets for the game and good reviews, 0.5 stars or click good. It's the end of the month, dear children, use your little hands to get rich, play leg ball and roll ball. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 492. Chapter 492. Men's gossip is terrible. Soon, the soldier who went back to report the news came back. He was gnawing on chicken legs as he walked, and he was carrying a basket in his hand. The basket was covered with white linen cloth and was vaguely steaming. The soldiers rushed forward in a swarm and grabbed the basket. Someone laughed and scolded, "Boy, did you eat up all the good ones on the road?" The soldier spit out the chicken bones and shouted, "Don't accuse me wrongly, I just got a chicken leg, and you saw it before I finished eating it." The basket is full of meat buns. The fourth lady said, let us cushion our stomachs first and wait. It's over, let's go back and have a drink, there's a table of food specially left for us. Haha, seriously. It's so good. I don't know what good dishes are at the banquet today, a soldier jumped happily. At this time, the basket was opened, and sure enough, it was filled with white and fat meat buns. The soldiers divided the food into 4 or 5 each and ate it in large gulps. They didn't care about the weeds and stones on the river bank and just lay down and basked in the sun, not to mention how comfortable they were. Only Mr. Wen and Wen Junyan, father and son, huddled aside half dead. They are hungry too. After all, they have been out doing the work so early in the morning and they haven't eaten yet. But they had just been given enough water, and they were afraid that if they said they were hungry, they would ask for another river meal, so they could only endure it. A few soldiers looked down upon their useless appearance, so they chatted with them when they had nothing to do. I said, old man, what on earth are you thinking? Are you an old fool? Why do you treat your eldest son like a treasure when your eldest son is so useless? Our Mr. Wen is such a good man, brave and resourceful, why don't you treat him like a treasure? See you there. Yes, is this eldest son born to you and the woman you are in love with? Yes, yes, isn't there often such a story in dramas? There is no such thing as beating mandarin ducks, and a brothel girl cannot be married home. The brothel girl throws herself into the river after giving birth to a child, so the man takes the child home and records it as his real wife. Down. Oh, that's what I guessed too. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to ignore the filial and promising second son and just hold a straw bag. Who said men don't gossip anymore? When men start gossiping, their aunts and wives will step aside. The soldiers were chattering lively, which made old Mrs. Wen so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. Unfortunately, when he opened his mouth, a mouthful of river water spurted out. Fortunately, the Li family's banquet was eaten quickly, and when the sun set, the escorting procession passed by the stone bridge. The people under the bridge could hear the laughter and bustle clearly. Mr. Wen didn't know where he got the courage. He wanted to call his son loudly, but a soldier quickly drew his saber and put it on his neck. Any dissatisfaction or indignation becomes a joke in front of the saber. It wasn't until the team had gone far and there was no sound at all that the soldier put away his saber, but Su was not relieved. He raised his hand, and the scabbard hit old man Wen's forehead hard. The old man screamed in pain, and his forehead, my son, suddenly swelled up into a big lump. The soldiers ignored them and pulled the father and son away and climbed onto the bridge. Soon, the carriage and the entourage returned to their original positions. Chang Sui was not beaten, but he was still shaking with fear. The soldiers packed old Mrs. Wen and Wen Junyan back into the carriage. One of the soldiers smiled and pulled the wrinkled clothes of the father and son, and said, "You two, you must remember the lesson you learned today. Don't dare to do anything again in the future. What's the crooked idea? It's just as simple as letting you drink water. Also, our Lord Marquis has recently been tracking down a spy who has taken refuge with the barbarians. This spy is very cunning and may not be hiding in someone's house. You'd better help keep an eye on it when you go back." After saying that, he closed the car door and shouted to his brothers, let's go home and eat." "Okay, let's go quickly, I'm already hungry." "You ate the most buns just now, why are you hungry again? You're a loser." The soldiers laughed, shouldered their sabers, and ran away into the brilliant sunset. Leaving the Wen family's carriage parked on the road for a long time, Mr. Wen finally ordered, "Let's go home quickly." Chang Sui quickly turned around and ran away towards Kyoto. Wen Junyan held his belly and the carriage shook, causing him to vomit out water again and again. "Ugh, Dad, I'm going to sue them, beat up the court official." As a result, before he could finish speaking, Mr. Wen slapped him the back of the head. "You idiot, Do you want to kill the whole family? Didn't you hear just now that the Marquis is catching the barbarian spies, who don't know where they are hiding, whose family? He is warning us that if we dare to cause trouble again, our family will be accused of harboring spies. Have you forgotten the Wang family? How did the third son of the Wang family become crazy? It was because of this crime that he was thrown into prison and driven crazy. You can also imagine just like Wang Lao-san, right? When Junyan remembered the scene of Wang Lao-san having fun on the street with his bare legs, and he couldn't help but shuddered, no, no. Then shut your mouth. We will suffer today's loss. Old Mrs. Wen gritted his teeth with hatred. He wanted to say something harsh but didn't dare, so he could only say vaguely, we'll talk about it later. Then when we get home like this, my family will ask. Now that he was no longer worried about his life, when Junyan remembered the issue of face. The father and son came out in a rage and returned with injuries all over their bodies. They didn't have a good fig leaf, and they didn't know how many people would laugh at them. Mr. Wen thought for a moment and then looked at the driver driving the car in front of him. Mrs. Wen had already asked several times in the courtyard of the Wen family. When she heard that the old man and her husband had not returned yet, she became a little anxious. I wanted to talk to my mother-in-law, but she looked like she couldn't hold up the wall with mud, so it was useless to talk to her, so she simply didn't go. Fortunately, soon, news came from the front that the person was back. She hurried over and saw two doctors busy around her father-in-law and her husband. She was startled, and it was inconvenient to go forward, so she could only ask through the screen, "Old master, were you beaten by someone? What happened?" When Junyan's body was covered with bruises. The doctor was taking medicinal oil and rubbing them away. He screamed in pain, but he still hurriedly responded, "What nonsense are you talking about? I am a fourth-grade imperial official. Who dares to hit me?" The carriage flipped over on the road. "Oh, he fell off the stone bridge. It would be great if we could just save our lives." Mr. Wen also echoed, "Go down and follow Wenan, who will serve you unfavorably. I will give you 20 blows." Yes, old master Mrs. Wen had no doubts and immediately ordered someone to arrest the chief attendant and put him on a board in the yard. She also let all the slaves take a look so that they would remember it in the future. But the two busy doctors in the room looked at each other with ridicule in their eyes. The words of the Wen family and his son were successful in deceiving others, but they were full of loopholes. The injuries on their bodies make it look like they were beaten. Obviously Mr. Wen also knew about this, so when the two doctors left, they both received generous medical fees and successfully sealed their mouths. In Kui's village, a newlywed couple had just worshipped heaven and earth and were sent to the bridal chamber. Mrs. Liu's smile was like flowers. He was really happier than his own son getting a wife. 7 or 8 old friends from the Liu family and the Kui family came here. Regardless of whether they looked down on men marrying into the family, they were all happy that their old friends had a successor. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 493. Chapter 493, Make an exception for your family. Until late at night, the banquet dispersed, and the Liu family helped to see off the guests and clean up the yard. The newlyweds could finally breathe a sigh of relief and changed into loose pajamas. The couple sat opposite each other, their faces red for a moment, not knowing what to say. Mr. Wen stood up and took out a box from his luggage and handed it to his wife. "Jinro, look at this, it's a gift for you." Kui Jinro was curious and surprised. She quickly opened the box and took out a beaded crown. "Ah, it's so beautiful, I'll be wearing matching clothes tomorrow morning." She glanced at her husband and said, Did you get this from Funiur? Ah, how do you know? Mr. Wen was surprised, then smiled, and said, yes, this girl has the most pearls at home. You don't know, when she gave it to me, she was so distressed that she almost cried. I wanted to be polite, but she told me to take it away quickly, otherwise she would regret it. Ha ha ha, Kuijin-ro smiled so hard, as bright as a spring flower. This girl is just a little money crazy, wait until I find a good set of jewelry to repay her. But before she could finish speaking, she was held tightly in a warm and generous embrace. Mr. Wen carefully hugged his wife, as if he owned the whole world, cherishing her 1,000 times. Jinro, you are finally my wife. Kui Jinro was stunned for a moment, and hugged him tightly. Yes, although we have taken many detours and delayed too many years, we are finally husband and wife. From then on, we grow old together, with no doubt of our love. The big red dragon and phoenix candles on the side were burning, and a lantern burst out with a pop sound, and the gentle night completely opened. 2 days passed by in a blink of an eye. In the morning, the newlyweds of the Lu family came to visit, so naturally they happily prepared a banquet. Seeing his niece's rosy face and smiling eyes, Mr. Lu became more and more satisfied with his niece's son-in-law, and told him, when can I go to Zinken and ask Dr. Zhang to take a look at her and take care of her body? It's best to give birth to a child. However, if it doesn't work out, don't worry. You can choose good children and adopt two in the future. As long as you teach them well, they can still support the Kui family. Let's take a step back and say, you are not willing to adopt, there are two other people, Zhaiman and Jiaja, and Jiaran is not bad, when you are old, they will be filial to you. Mr. Wen and his wife both stood up and saluted, thanking the old man for his long-term plans for them. After lunch, the two of them said goodbye, got on the carriage, and headed straight to the new village. The village chief and Uncle Zhao stood on the path at the entrance of the village chatting with their hands behind their backs. The melon field in front of me is lush and green, and it is growing extremely well. It must be that by the end of summer, the garden will be full of silver seeds again. In fact, Uncle Zhao lived with the Li family for several weekdays. He had no worries about food and drink, and clothes and shoes for all seasons were delivered on time every time. They really have no place to use their money, but who would dislike it if money bites their hand? Especially the Li family, with so many children, if they want to study or get married, the more money the better. They don't have much ability, so they can feel more at ease if they help out with more work and contribute to the family. Seeing the Kui family's carriage approaching, the old men became even more happy and waved to say hello. Mr. Wen jumped out of the carriage and saluted the gentleman. For the sake of their marriage, the gentleman also followed suit. The old men smiled and asked him to be polite and hurry back to the village. There would definitely be wine at home in the evening, and they would be in the back when it was busy. Sure enough, 2 more tables were set up in the Li family yard in the evening. Although Mr. Ho, Li Laosi, and Li Yong are not here, it is still so lively that it almost turns upside down. Mr. Wen was half drunk, but Mrs. Li spoke to protect him before he was rescued and sent back to the Kui family yard. Mr. Wen took 10 days off and was not in a hurry to return to the city, so the couple stayed in the village. At this time of year, the orchard is already full of flowers. The hot spring valley is overcrowded, and many flower lovers cannot squeeze in, so they stay in Weishu, Wangzhuang, or Zhuang, and then wander around the foot of the mountain during the day. Some people wanted to give money to go for a walk in the mountains, sit under the flower trees, drink wine, and recite poems, but unfortunately, everyone in the new village did not agree. The orchard is the second cornucopia of Broken Gold Beach. Not only is it easy to cause chaos when there are too many people, but there are also dishonest people who break off the flower branches, which means there will be fewer fruits to pick in the autumn. But on this day, this rule was broken. Because Mr. Ho and Li Laosi personally welcomed a group of 7 or 8 people up the mountain. The villagers responsible for patrolling do not know the identities of those people, but those brought back by the Marquis are their own people. If you want to go up the mountain to see your own fruit trees and flowers, of course that's fine. Li Laozi went back to his home in person and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Tao Hongying did not go to the restaurant, and then said, "The Marquis brought a distinguished guest to enjoy the flowers on the mountain. I will bring some tea and snacks there first. You can do it at noon. There are some new dishes, and the dining table will be placed in the thatched pavilion in the orchard." Okay, Tao Hongying didn't think too much, and cooking was her specialty, so she smiled and said, "It just so happened that my second brother came back from buying a lot of snacks yesterday and is waiting for me to put them on the plate." After that, she went to look for the snack box, then turned around and asked, "Is the guest a boy or a girl? You can ask your daughter for some fruits. The ones at home have just been finished. Since they are distinguished guests, let's entertain them well." Okay, Li Laozi didn't dare to say more. He responded vaguely and walked around to the backyard. Jiyan was sitting at the table painting red, and Mrs. Li was doing needlework with her. When Li Laozi came in, he said, "Daughter, give Dad some fruits to entertain the guests. The Marquis is taking the guests to enjoy the flowers on the mountain." "Ah, my foster father is back." Hearing the good news, he was happy and jumped down to the ground. On the day of Mr. Wen's wedding, there were so many people and she didn't even have time to talk to her adoptive father. He left early the next morning. It was rare to catch her foster father free today, so she looked at her grandma with a smile and begged, "Grandma, the flowers on the mountain are blooming, let's go and have a look, okay?" Mrs. Li glanced at the big characters written by her granddaughter, and she said seriously and orderly, "You can go with your father, but your adoptive father is entertaining guests, so don't cause trouble." "Grandma, don't worry, Fu Niu is the best." Jiyan hugged the old lady and kissed her, then ran to the next door and took 2 small straw baskets from the space. One basket was filled with red apples, and the other basket was filled with yellow pears. They were both cleaned and dripping with water. They looked extremely fresh. Shui Ling and Shui Yun happened to come in from outside, so they helped carry it and put the teapot and teacups in the front yard. Li Laozi picked up his daughter and put it on his shoulders. Shui Ling Shui Yun followed behind carrying things, and they went up the mountain. On the way, I met Mr. Li Laoer and Mr. Wen rushing back from the hot spring valley. Li Laoer was also curious and asked, "I heard that the Marquis has brought a guest back. I wonder who the distinguished guest is." Li Laozi couldn't explain clearly, so he smiled and said, "You will know when you meet me." So, a group of 6 people, large and small, followed the path up the mountain. They saw a few people in a grass pavilion halfway up the mountain, and everyone quickened their pace. The water spirit is lively and walking beside it with a basket in her hand. When she saw a rabbit running past, she shouted in surprise, bent down, picked up a stone and threw it. Everyone heard the sound and went away. Rabbit did not see it, but saw that the stone thrown by Shui Ling was hit back again. Shui Ling had a neat figure and ducked sideways, and the stone was behind him. The person walking behind her was none other than Li Laozi, carrying good news on his shoulders. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 494. Chapter 494. A child's words are worth 1,000 pounds. Fortunately, Li Laozi's reaction was not slow. He raised the stick in his hand and knocked down the stone. This stick was originally intended to hit the grass to scare the snake, but the snake didn't touch it and saved itself first. Shui Ling almost hurt his master. His eyes were red with anger. He threw the basket to Shui Yun and ran forward. Everyone hurriedly caught up and saw that Shui Ling was already fighting with a young man. Shui Ling is small in stature and her head only reaches the man's shoulders, but she is as good as the man in fighting. The two of them were going back and forth. It was obvious that neither of them had killed anyone, but neither of them were polite. Ji Yan sat on his father's shoulder, his mouth wide open in shock. Although she knew that the two maids her adoptive father had found for her were both capable of martial arts, she stayed at home every day, eating and sleeping, occasionally being lazy, and almost never encountered any danger. The two maids had no chance to show off their skills, and she almost forgot that they still had this ability. The most important thing is that she has never seen Shui Ling Shui Yun practicing martial arts. But they followed Grandma He, cooking, sewing clothes and shoes, running errands, and sending messages, and they were all happy every day. At this time, someone in the thatched pavilion shouted, "Guanfei, come back." The young man took the initiative to retract his hand, glanced at Shui Ling coldly, and then disappeared out of sight. Li Laozi guessed that the stone thrown by Shui Ling just now must have been directed towards the Cao pavilion, so he was considered a threat and was counterattacked. He quickly greeted Shui Ling, and then entered the thatched pavilion in a few steps. Li Lao and Mr. Wen followed in, but when they looked up at the people sitting in the middle of the pavilion, their faces changed in shock. "Your Majesty." The Marquis waved his hand in time to stop them, and said in a low voice, "Today it is my cousin who is here as a guest to enjoy the flowers." Li Lao and Mr. Wen understood each other, and they quickly changed their words and said in unison, "Well, Mr. Huang." The noble young emperor who used to sit in the Jinluan palace is now wearing a sapphire blue gown with a jade belt around his waist. His black hair is neatly combed with a jade hairpin. It is a little less majestic and a little more clear and handsome. He smiled, raised his hand, and said, "Sit down, everyone. Today I am the guest and you are the host." Don't dare, Li Lao saluted again, and then stepped aside with Mr. Wen. The emperor glanced at the reserved Shui Ling and asked the Marquis with a smile, "Is this from Zhuang?" The Marquis nodded, "Yes, he is quite clever, so I sent him to take care of Fu Niuer. His skills are quite good." The emperor praised him, causing Shui Ling and Shui Yun to kneel down and kowtow, and then quickly set out tea, snacks, and fruits. Ji Yan originally ran to her adoptive father and hugged his arm. Now she thought about it and ran to Mr. Li Lao and Mr. Wen. She pushed two small wooden stools and said, "Second uncle, sit down. Master uncle, sit down." The emperor doesn't say anything. Where can Mr. Li Lao and Mr. Wen dare to sit down? Li Lao could only rub his niece's hair and said with a smile, "Fu Niu is good, my uncle is not tired." Ji Yan shook her little head, pointed at the sea of flowers behind them, and said, "The second uncle and the junior uncle are too tall, blocking the emperor from seeing the flowers." Li Lao and Mr. Wen were stunned when they heard this, but the emperor laughed, "No wonder my cousin likes this little girl, she is such a smart and good boy." He motioned for Li Lao and Mr. Wen to sit down, then called for Good News and came forward, stretched out his hand on her fat face, pinched it, and said with a smile, "Little girl, do you still recognize me?" "Of course I know you, you are Uncle Huang." The Good News climbed to the seat next to the emperor and asked with a smile, "Uncle Huang, during the Chinese New Year, I even gave you a New Year gift. So many fruits and green vegetables, do you like them?" "I like it." The emperor smiled and nodded. "You don't want to reciprocate the gift, do you? Your adoptive father robbed so many good things from me and gave them to you. After all, I still suffered a loss." Ji Yan blushed with embarrassment and hurriedly said, "Then I will send more good things to Uncle Huang in the future, so that Uncle Huang will not suffer any loss." The emperor couldn't help laughing again and asked smoothly, "I am younger than your adoptive father. Why do you call me uncle? Shouldn't you call me uncle?" Ji Yan's head shook like a rattle, and her little face was full of seriousness. "My adoptive father said that Uncle Huang is the most powerful person in the world and cannot be regarded as a younger brother to anyone, so even if Uncle Huang is a younger brother, he must be called Uncle Huang." This was a hard thing to say, but the emperor understood it and felt more and more satisfied. Now the military power of the dock defense line has been handed over to my cousin. From time to time, someone would remind him of something in his ear, for fear that his cousin would be proud of himself. But they didn't know that their cousin was bent on regaining the land and had vowed not to have a family. Even the Marquis mansion and the Zheng family village were handed over to the adopted daughter. If this is not credible, then who else can? The Marquis looked at the smiling fat girl and felt extremely pleased. Others thought the little girl was lazy and greedy for money. Only he knows that this child is so smart and transparent, and is always using her method to carefully protect everyone. These few words from a child just now are worth as many times as he has shown his loyalty, and as many times as the border guards have fought and won battles. In the grass pavilion, the cool breeze is blowing, the fragrance of flowers is everywhere, and you can look at the splendor and blooming all over the mountains and plains. No matter how many worries you have, they will completely disappear when you get here. The emperor didn't say anything about government affairs, but only picked some interesting things about Zindu to joke about. Even Mr. Wen's newlyweds were teased a few times. Mr. Wen was not polite and took the opportunity to take another 10 days off. He planned to go to the grave of his father-in-law, who was also his mentor, Grand Scholar Kui, to pay homage and comfort the old man's spirit in heaven. The emperor readily agreed. There are many censors in the court, and if there is one less censor to keep an eye on the courtiers, nothing will go wrong. Soon, Tao Hongying brought Aunt He to deliver the food. When she saw the emperor, she was also startled, then stepped forward to salute and say hello. If I had known it was a noble person coming, I would have added an extra bowl of chicken noodle soup. Last time, the noble person ate. My mother clearly remembers the aroma of chicken noodle soup and always recites it every time she eats it. The emperor nodded and said with a smile, I heard that your restaurant has opened private dishes and it has been well received. It's a pity that I can't go and try it. Don't worry, nobleman. Although I didn't know that your nobleman was coming today, the dishes prepared are all the best sold in the restaurant. How do you think they taste, nobleman? As Tao Hongying spoke, she put the food box in her hand on the table and went to take it from Grandma He. As a result, Grandma He had already knelt down on the ground. The emperor took another look at Nanny He and recognized that she was from the palace, so he said, Get up. Now that you are out of the palace, take good care of the princess. You are lucky to have arrived at the Li family. Grandma He kowtowed excitedly, and then helped Tao Hongying prepare the food with all her hands and feet. Spring is prone to dryness and strong fire, so Tao Hongying did not cook too much meat or fish today. There are only two main dishes, roast duck and boiled pork slices, and the rest are light side dishes. For example, longjing shrimps, hot cabbage, garlic lettuce, stir-fried pig ears and beans, plus a plate of gold and silver steamed buns. The table was full of green and bright red. The emperor had a great appetite when he saw it, so he invited Li Lao Li Lao Si, Mr. Wen, and others to sit down and eat together. The guard named Guanfei was about to step forward to test the poison, but Ji Yin had already raised a small bowl and approached the emperor, shouting, Uncle Huang, help me pick up the meat. I don't want to eat vegetables. The emperor smiled, raised his chopsticks and picked vegetables for her, and said, Children should not be picky eaters, as they may not grow taller. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 495. Chapter 495 Fu Niu never disappoints. Ji Yin stuck out her tongue and ate all the vegetables obediently. The emperor also ate with him, and even made a duck roll for Ji Yin with his own hands. Ji Yin ate it deliciously and did not forget to praise her mother. My mother is the best, my mother cooks the most delicious food, my mother is the smartest, she can cook the food if she has the recipe, I am so smart, just like my mother. The emperor was so amused that he kept laughing, but Tao Hongying blushed and couldn't stop her daughter's mouth, so she hurriedly retreated outside the pavilion. Had she known that the emperor was coming in person, she would not have come. Originally, she thought that the marquis was so mysterious that he brought the girl here to enjoy the flowers. She thought of taking a sneak peek and going back to talk to her mother. Sure enough, curiosity is a must. The marquis and the emperor are cousins. They often stay in the palace for meals, so they are used to it. Jian is a child, and no one will find fault if he doesn't understand the rules. Li Laozi is a brave and rough man. He doesn't seem to think anything of it, and he eats generously. There were only Li Lao and Mr. Wen, and they were very tired after eating one meal. Finally waiting for the emperor to finish eating, they quickly put down their chopsticks. The marquis hugged the fat girl and rubbed her round belly. Li Laozi folded the leftovers together and ate them all. Even the vegetable soup was wiped clean with steamed buns, not a drop was left. The emperor couldn't help but said, "General Li is very frugal and does not waste food." Li Laozi smiled naively and replied, "Although life at home is better now, we suffered a lot when we were fleeing famine. Especially when we were in the mountains, we had to work hard to find some food, and we had to take care of the elderly and children. I can eat, but day and night, I always feel empty in my stomach. So, now I have this problem. I want to put everything I can eat into my mouth, and I don't dare to waste a little bit." The emperor nodded, with a hint of sadness in his eyes. The emperor, did not do a good job, and the people of the world suffered. "No, your majesty," Li Laozi quickly waved his hand, "my mother often said that it is not easy to be a poor man. Whoever is in charge knows how hard it is. We Tianwu had no food and money before, so it is normal that we cannot defeat the barbarians. Now that we will have food soon and money in the treasury, we will definitely be able to drive the barbarians back to their hometown and regain Jiangbei. Still, the emperor is responsible for saving food and money. As for killing barbarians and those of us who carry swords, in 2 or 3 years, our Tianwu will definitely be the strongest in the world." The emperor was used to hearing the praises of literati, but suddenly he heard Li Laozi's words, which even contained some outrageous words. He was extremely pleasant to his ears and felt comfortable in his heart. He couldn't help but said, "Okay, what Commander Li said is good. Together, our monarchs and ministers will definitely take back the mountains and rivers and restore the prosperous age of Tianwu." Mr. Wen, Li Lao, Marquis, and even the guards outside the pavilion, Tao Hongying and others all knelt down and shouted in unison, "Take back the mountains and rivers, and give me back my prosperous age." "Okay, okay," the emperor helped the marquis up with his own hands, and was about to help Mr. Wen and others, but was amused by the good news and laughed. The fat girl may have eaten too much, and her stomach felt a little queasy when she knelt on the ground, so she simply lay on the ground and made an extremely pious prostrations. The emperor picked up the fat girl and laughed loudly, "This child is really blessed. No matter how many troubles he has, he can't help but laugh when he sees her." After saying that, he asked the good news, "Uncle Huang is very happy to see you today and wants to give you a wish. Is there anything you want?" When everyone heard this, not only were they not surprised, but their eyes were a little nervous. Although the Li family does not appear much in the wealthy circles of Xindu, they are already considered nouveau riche. Mr. Wen's incident has attracted even more attention in Kyoto recently. At this time, if the good news brings any kind of grace to the family, it will be a burning fire, and the harm will far outweigh the good. Fortunately, good news never disappoints them. The fat girl carefully counted her fingers and counted them one by one. "Grandma is in good health, my brothers are good at studying, my eldest uncle is good at business, my second uncle is good at being an official, my third uncle is good at running a shop, and my father is good at fighting. My foster father secretly gave it to me. It doesn't matter if it's a gold nugget, it's even better if Uncle Wen and Sister Kui get married and they want to give me a little brother to play with." She hesitated for a long time and looked at the emperor eagerly. Uncle Huang, why don't you tell grandma to allow Fu Niuer to eat snacks as she pleases? Grandma has locked the snack box, so Fu Niuer can't steal it. Ha ha ha, the emperor couldn't help laughing again. The fat girl counted for a long time, and everyone in the family told her, and finally she thought of herself, and she just wanted to have some snacks. You must know that all the people around him, even if they claim to be loyal to the country, are actually just seeking fame and fortune. Nowadays, how valuable is the innocent heart of a child? Okay, Uncle Huang promises you that he will fight for your right to eat snacks. In addition, Uncle Huang also has a shop that sells snacks. Your adoptive father will take over it in a few days. It will be considered a gift from Uncle Huang. You can eat whatever you want from now on, okay? Okay, thank you, Uncle Huang. Jiyan was very happy. Originally, I just wanted to sing a high-profile song for my family and coax this top boss. Unexpectedly, she would have such an unexpected gain. A dim sum shop with a royal background. In the future, when she is not lazy, she can think about some special snacks and earn some pocket money for herself. She got excited when she thought about the money. She hugged the emperor and gave him a big kiss. Then she suddenly remembered the rules and quickly covered her mouth. It's over. Grandma said Fu Niuer is a big girl. The emperor understood this and couldn't help but smile. He quickly comforted him and said, Uncle Huang will keep it a secret for you. Your grandma will definitely not know. After saying that, he also asked everyone, remember, keep it secret for Fu Niuer. How dare everyone resist the decree? After chatting for a while, everyone left the pavilion and took a walk in the orchard. Tao Hongying quickly packed up the dishes and chopsticks with her, and then went down the mountain. If she stayed any longer, her heart might explode with fear. Remembering that her daughter had just coaxed the emperor to praise the family and the shop, she couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. Is this really the daughter she gave birth to? That's the emperor, and he was coaxed around like an old lady at home. There are more than a dozen boxes of bees placed in the corner of the orchard. This season is when the bees are busiest. Of course, the fruit nectar produced is also the sweetest. Ji Yansu felt that it was too soft to take over the emperor's shop, so he asked Shuiling to go home and get 2 small porcelain jars, mix 2 jars of honey, and give them to the emperor. The emperor was really happy to accept it. When the sun turned to the west, everyone came down the mountain. The emperor got into the carriage and waved to Jiyan, who was sitting on Li Laoxi's shoulder. I will go to the palace with your adoptive father next time. Uncle Huang has many good things. Jiyan's eyes shone brightly and she nodded quickly. The Marquis rubbed Jiyan's hair and said with a smile, my foster father has prepared a gift for you and will bring it to you when he comes back tomorrow. Jiyan thought it was just jewelry and didn't expect much. Instead, she wanted to tell her adoptive father that she should bring the emperor to visit more times in the future. Just rob a few more shops, and she'll be rich. It's still the 4th update of the day. Huahua is great, can't we give praise and encouragement? A must-read ticket for Leg Tuck Ball, good reviews for the ball, 0.5 stars or click good, press the ball button for updates. The praise and encouragement from the treasures are the motivation to write in a beautiful way. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 496. Chapter 496. You can always trust Dr. Zhang. Mrs. Li didn't know that the emperor was coming. She waited at home for half the afternoon but didn't see her children and grandchildren coming back, so she went out to look for them. As a result, she didn't go far when she met everyone and asked with a smile, what kind of guests did the Marquis bring to enjoy the flowers? I asked Hong Ying if she was a woman, but she still hesitated and refused to tell. Li Lauer stepped forward to support my mother's arm and whispered a few words. Mrs. Li was startled and said angrily, "Oh, why didn't the Marquis say anything? It's such a neglect of the noble man." Li Lauer smiled and explained, "I don't dare to disturb too many people. I just want to relax and enjoy the flowers." "That's true," Mrs. Li nodded. "There are only a few people in our family. Sometimes I feel a headache. I have so much to worry about. That person is in charge of the whole world. I'm afraid it will be even more tiring." As he spoke, everyone entered the courtyard. Kui Jinro from next door heard the commotion and came over to chat. She and Mr. Wen are newlyweds, and they wish they could stay together like conjoined twins. They have been missing each other for most of the day. At this moment, everyone couldn't help laughing when they saw the couple sitting together and talking in low voices. The couple looked up and saw the strange expressions on everyone's faces, and couldn't help but blush. Mrs. Li quickly said, "Didn't you say that you want to ask Divine Dr. Zhang to take your pulse and check your body? I just have nothing to do at the moment, so I invite Divine Dr. Zhang to come and take a look, and let him have dinner with you tonight." Kui Jinro nodded, "Okay, thank you, Auntie. What are you grateful for? It's all from my family." Mrs. Li clapped her hand, and then shouted to Zhang Feng to run some errands. "Mr. Zhang is probably not busy and will be here soon." Li Lauer and Li Laoci couldn't be present, so they made excuses to avoid it, leaving only Mr. Wen, his wife, the old lady, and Ji Yin who liked to join in the fun. Shenji Zhang has a bad mouth, but his medical skills are very good, and it is his own family who seeks medical treatment, so he is particularly careful in diagnosing the pulse this time. He has examined both the left and right wrists of Mr. Wen and his wife. Mr. Wen and his wife are worried. After all, they are already very young and it is not easy to have a child. Even Mrs. Li's palms were sweating nervously. Fortunately, Dr. Zhang pondered for a while and said, "Fortunately, although there are some problems, they are not serious. After a few months of treatment, I should be able to conceive a child." "Uncle Zhang." Mr. Wen wanted to ask if it was true, but he only called him once, and his lips trembled and he couldn't continue. Shenji Dr. Zhang waved his hand and reassured the two of them, "What are you worried about? With my help, any problem can be solved, not to mention you don't have any big problems. Jinro's palace is cold. Take medicinal soup for 2 months to adjust. Mr. Wen doesn't even need to take medicine. I will give you a prescription for food supplements. In the future, drink more soup to replenish kidney qi. It will last a year and a half. There's good news soon." "Oh, that's great," old Mrs. Li clapped her hands happily. "After all the hardships, there is happiness. This is the happiness after hardships. You should listen to the Dr. Zhang quickly, don't worry about the boy and the girl, and have a baby as soon as possible. He will be your support for the rest of your life." Mr. Wen nodded vigorously, while Kui Jinro couldn't help but wipe her tears. At that time, she and Fu Qingrong had been married for 2 years and had no children. She was already anxious and anxious. She went to many doctors for treatment, but they all said that there was nothing wrong with her health, but she just couldn't get pregnant. Later, when her father died of illness, Fu Qingrong, a snobbish person, felt that the Kui family was useless, and became even more indifferent to her, and even began to take concubines. She was so angry that she went to Zhuangzi outside the city to live alone, and she no longer wanted to get pregnant and have a child. Now that she and her senior brother are finally married, and the Wen family is like that, she wants to give her senior brother a child even more. In this way, the family relationship can be compensated by the children, and the senior brother will not be so sad. Unfortunately, as she is getting older, she has been worried that her body will not allow it. At this moment, after receiving the approval from the miracle Dr. Zhang, her heart fell to the ground, and she couldn't hold back her tears. Mr. Wen understood his wife's mixed feelings, so he held her hand and knelt down to Dr. Zhang together. "Thank you, Uncle Zhang." "Get up," Dr. Zhang helped them with his own hands and shouted impatiently, "they are all said to be members of his own family. What are you doing kneeling around here? You have to call me grandpa after you give birth, isn't it right for me to do you a favor?" Mr. Wen and his wife then stood up and sat down again. They were still holding hands, extremely excited. At this moment, Li Zhensheng came back from the city and led Li Laoer and Li Laosi, who were talking in the courtyard. When they heard the good news, they also congratulated Mr. Wen and his wife, and the room was very lively for a while. Old Mrs. Li hurriedly arranged dinner. "The fourth child will also follow Mr. Ho back to the dock tomorrow. Let's have something good tonight and have fun." Li Zhensheng laughed and said, "By coincidence, I brought some fish and shrimp back, and my brothers and sisters stewed them for everyone to drink." Everybody was chatting away, cooking and frying in the kitchen, and when night fell, dinner was served. Uncle Zhao and the others said they were going to patrol the melon fields in the evening and did not come over to drink. So, I sent them meals. Even Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu got a plate of braised shrimps in oil. They are all breastfeeding, feeding their children, and need to replenish their bodies. Jiyan sat next to her grandma, eating her meal obediently, listening to the adults talking, smiling occasionally, and looking the same as usual. But after eating, she said she was sleepy and wanted to sleep. Old Mrs. Li quickly called Aunt He to take her granddaughter back to the backyard. Finally, she asked everyone, "Has Fu Niuer been naughty today? Why is she a little wilted?" Everyone was surprised, and Li Lao replied, "No, this child is very smart. He made the nobleman very happy today and even gave Fu Niuer a snack shop." "That's right," Li Laosi also said, "I carried it on my shoulders all the way up and down the mountain, and I didn't encounter any insects or snakes, so I couldn't possibly be scared." Seeing that she couldn't get anything out of the question, Mrs. Li waved her hand and said, "Eat, I'm probably tired from playing." This child doesn't hide anything in his heart. If he's unhappy, he will definitely say it. Everyone also laughed and talked about other trivial matters. Finally, after eating and drinking, they dispersed. Old Mrs. Li said not to worry about it, but she didn't delay a step and went directly to the backyard. Grandma He was in the living room, sewing by the oil lamp. When she saw the old lady coming, she whispered, "Old lady, the lady is asleep." "Really asleep?" Mrs. Li became more and more worried and quietly opened the door and took a look at the inner room. With a little light from the moonlight outside the window, she could see clearly. The little granddaughter slept with her hands and feet spread out, which was very comfortable. She was reluctantly relieved and whispered to Nanny He, "You should go to bed early and be more alert at night." "Yes, old lady." Grandma He agreed and sent the old lady to the next door. Then she packed the sewing basket and fell asleep quietly. She didn't know that in the inner room, Jiyan, who was sleeping soundly, slowly opened his eyes, and the next moment, his whole person disappeared. In the small courtyard of the space, the chickens, ducks, geese, fat pigs, and rabbits who had been hungry for a day finally waited for their master to appear, and they all pulled their necks and shouted, protesting non-stop. Jiyan threw a few cabbages to this one and prepared food for that one. After finally finishing his work, he went to the nursery. Hung in a cage on a tree, the little green snake was already desperate for life. Even when he saw the little devil approaching, he didn't want to raise his head. "I don't want to." The little magic head actually found that the conscience was found, and suddenly stuffed it to 2 eggs. The little green snake was so happy that it swallowed one in one bite for fear that the little devil would regret it. It choked to death and did not dare to spit it out. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 497. Chapter 497, Growing Up in an Instant. Ji-Yan pouted and ignored the hungry little green snake. Then she found a large smooth bluestone next to the nursery and lay down on it. She picked up a tender cucumber and gnawed it. Logically speaking, today, I successfully deceived a dim sum shop from Dragon Thai, helped my adoptive father show my loyalty, and even made Dragon Thai happy. It should be considered a great success. But she just felt a little complicated. She knew that this was Tianwu where imperial power was supreme, not the era in her previous life where everyone was said to be equal. In the previous life, there was rule of law and democracy. But here, everything is in compliance with the emperor's wishes. Some people can be blessed with glory and wealth just because of the emperor's words. There are also centuries-old families that were wiped out because of the emperor's words. In the past, although she knew this, she lived under the protection of her family and never paid attention to it. Today I was suddenly faced with something so intuitive and real, and the impact was a bit big. The shrewd and smooth second uncle, the wise and elegant Mr. Wen, has to half bend in front of the emperor and cannot sit down casually. As for the adoptive father who has great military achievements and is indomitable, he is even the cousin of the emperor, so he has to be extremely cautious in his words. Thinking about it carefully, the Li family has been protected by the emperor ever since they arrived at Sujintan and built a new village. Although there is Lord Marquis and Mr. Wen guarding the village, and the villagers are united and working hard, without the emperor's occasional attention and love. The fat piece of broken gold beach has long been carved up by a pack of wolves. Logically speaking, she, the whole family, and even hundreds of villagers should respect and be grateful to the emperor. But she couldn't help it, and an idea suddenly came to her mind. If one day in the future, their family would no longer be loved or valued by the emperor, or even be considered a threat. So, what will it look like? Will her beloved home be destroyed in an instant? A beloved relative will be beheaded? All good things cease to exist? Even if it didn't happen, just thinking about it made her feel scared. This feeling of placing everything on others is really not good. Perhaps it's time for her to do something. At least I can no longer indulge in the protection and love of my family, wishing that I would never grow up again. Her childhood is over. She can no longer be as naughty and get into trouble as she was before, act coquettishly and make trouble, and enjoy herself as much as she likes. She should try to make a plan, try to set a goal, and try to make herself stronger. In the future, she can also repay and protect her family. The bluestone took a deep breath, clenched her little fist and punched the gray sky, shouting loudly. I can't be lazy anymore, I'm going to grow up. As if to respond to her, the sky suddenly flickered for a moment. Then starting from the edge of the nursery, the 5 acres of private land quickly turned black. Although it is still not as good as a nursery, it looks much better than the ordinary land before. Ji-Yan is one with the space. She immediately realized this change. She turned over and got up, her mouth wide open in shock. Wow, is this a small gift for me to encourage me to make progress? She happily jumped off the stone and ran to the fields to look around. The corn, potatoes, and vegetables that were planted earlier seemed to have not changed much, but she could feel a vague sense of joy among them. It seems like she feels so satisfied and happy every time she has a full meal. Obviously, all crops are also full and have benefited from this change. The growth rate in the few ridges of land in the nursery is dozens of times higher than normal. Even if these 5 acres of private land cannot achieve the magic of a nursery, at least there will be some improvement, right? Ji-Yan quickly found some cabbage seeds, plowed an open space, and planted them directly. Then she squatted aside and watched. Unfortunately, after waiting and waiting, the cabbage seedlings still did not grow. Out of boredom, she found pen and paper and made a short-term plan. Even though she misses her carefree childhood very much, she said that when she grows up, she really wants to grow up. While you are still young, you must learn what you need to learn. For example, practicing martial arts. Jiyan pinched the 5-layered belly, gritted his teeth and wrote the words I will on the first line. The second one is to study medicine. With an excellent resource like Dr. Zhang, if you can't learn some life-saving skills, it will be a waste. The third one is to learn the rules, not only to learn them, but also to master them. Maybe one day the rules will no longer be a constraint, but a weapon for her to attack others. The fourth is to study. Even if you cannot take the scientific examination, you must always be familiar with the ins and outs of the world, be familiar with history, and know yourself and your enemy. The fifth one is to have a good skill, be it cooking or needlework, or be proficient in both. It's just like Grandma said, if one day you need to do it yourself to ensure a decent life, at least you won't have trouble. The day's plan begins in the morning. People who live diligently usually get up before dawn. Men chop wood and dive into the water, while women feed chickens and pigs, cook and wash clothes, each performing their duties. Only children can lie in bed for a while, but they must get up when the sun rises in front of the window, otherwise, the sun will not reach their buttocks, and my buttocks will be opened first. In the Lee family's yard, Ms. Lee had already changed her clothes, washed up, and walked around the front yard again. She still didn't see her granddaughter getting up. She was a little worried, so she went to the next door. Mammy, he was combing the young master's hair. When she saw the old lady coming in, she smiled and said, Miss slept very soundly last night and just woke up. Jiyan smiled and showed her little white teeth, tied a braid, and with half of her hair loose, she rushed over and hugged her grandma, crawling around in her arms like a puppy. Grandma, where have you been? Fu Niu is miss you. Stinky girl, you know how to coax grandma. Didn't we just meet her last night? She said it as if she just came back from a long trip. Wash up quickly. Your mother is still waiting for us to eat. Old Ms. Lee nodded her granddaughter's forehead, with a look on her face. I was coaxed into smiling. Jiyan hugged her grandma and acted coquettishly for a while, and then asked Grandma he to comb the other braid. After finishing her work, she jumped off the ground, held her grandma's hand, and walked quietly to the front yard. Ms. Lee frowned slightly and looked her granddaughter up and down, feeling something was wrong. But except that her back is straighter, her granddaughter is still the same fat girl. There is no difference. She must be overthinking. The whole family sat around the round table, eating breakfast and talking about what they had to do during the day. Li Zhensheng is still going to the restaurant. Li Lauer wants to sort out the accounts of Hot Spring Valley for this month. Food and wages will be distributed at the end of the month. Tao Hongying has to adjust the set menu in the Hot Spring Valley in the morning, and is going to a restaurant in the afternoon. Tomorrow is another day of cooking private dishes, so she needs to make some preparations today. Li Laozi will wait for Mr. Ho to come back and go to the dock together. After everyone finished speaking, before Ms. Lee nodded, Jiyan also said, I have to learn the rules and write 20 pages of Chinese characters in the morning, and I have to go to the master to learn needlework in the afternoon. Everyone couldn't help but laugh after hearing this. Li Lauer said, we Fu Niu are also very busy, but we must do what we can and don't be too tired. I know, second uncle, I will try my best. Jiyan's chubby little face was tense and full of seriousness, which made everyone laugh even harder. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 498. Chapter 498. 3 of 3 Tales. Soon, the dining table was moved away, and before everyone could set off, Jiyan had already taken Grandma He's hand and went to Yes courtyard to study. Tao Hongying thought she knew her lazy daughter very well, and guessed that she was going to be naughty again. So, I secretly followed him to take a look, and saw that my daughter was reciting the palace rules seriously, so she was so frightened that she quickly retreated. Mrs. Lee was planning to take advantage of the nice weather to sunbathe in the quilt. When she saw her daughter-in-law coming in with a frown on her face, she asked, "What's the matter? Fu Niu is lazy again." Tao Hongying shook her head and said hesitantly, "Mom, Fu Niu studies very seriously." "Isn't this a good thing?" Mrs. Lee subconsciously responded, and was about to say something else. Suddenly remembering the illusion she had in the morning, she asked her daughter-in-law, "You also think something is wrong with Fu Niu, don't you? This girl seems to have when I grow up, I am not very sensible, but, I am no longer naughty or troublesome." "Yes, yes," Tao Hongying nodded repeatedly, "this child used to be lazy and wished he could study for a while and take a day off. Now he is suddenly diligent and serious. Why am I trembling in my heart? Did someone beat this child?" Mrs. Lee quickly waved her hand, "It's not me. I have such a smart and filial child at home. I can wake up laughing even in my dreams. Why are you beating the child when you have nothing to do?" "That's not what I meant," Mother Tao Hongying said, "I came down early yesterday. Did something happen after that?" Mrs. Lee quickly called Li Laosi to inquire. Li Laosi was even more confused, "No, everything is fine." The three of them sat across from each other, none of them understood, and suddenly felt that they were making a fuss out of a molehill. After all, the children stopped being lazy and started studying seriously, which is a good thing. It's just a bit too abnormal to put it on a lazy girl. How did they know that just because of a seed problem, the sensitive point in the lazy girl's heart was detonated? Even if they know it, they may not understand it. After all, everyone should kneel in front of that person, as a matter of course. The Li family didn't get a seat, so it's an honor to be able to stand aside. Fortunately, the Marquis came back with his people soon. When he entered the door, he smiled and asked, "Where's Fu Niu? I brought her something good." Li Laosi smiled and said, "Is it the one we caught in the mountains?" The Marquis nodded, and he happily ran to the yard next door and carried his daughter back. Jiyan was also happy to see the Marquis and stepped forward to hug her adoptive father's arm. The Marquis ruffled her hair. "Last time, during the military training, your father and I went up the mountain and happened to catch a little fox. In the past few days, it has been inspected by the eunuchs who train animals in the palace, and its claws have been clipped. The fangs are also broken off. Let's take them back today. Do you like them?" As he spoke, he motioned for his soldiers to come forward. The soldiers carried a 2-foot square cage and placed it on the table. After removing the black cloth from the wrapping, everyone could see it clearly. There is a little fox in the cage. He has a figure of 1 foot long, with snow-white fur, and eyes like amber. He is thin and small. He is half squatting, looking at everyone warily, baring his teeth from time to time, as if to warn everyone not to come forward. But it is really too small, so its behavior makes it more pretentious and cute, and it is so fierce. Jiyan liked it almost at first sight. He rushed to it and shouted happily, "It's a fox. It's so small and cute." Mr. Ho breathed a sigh of relief. The child liked it, so his work was not in vain. You know, they dispatched more than 300 people, and it took them a whole day and night to frighten away the big fox and successfully bring this little thing back. He called his soldiers, took an egg, and stuffed it into the corner of the cage. The little fox hesitated, but maybe he was too hungry, so he quickly turned his head and ate the egg. As soon as it turned around, everyone noticed the clues and gasped in surprise. This little fox actually has 3 tails. Mrs. Lee immediately said, "Isn't this fox a spirit? There is an old saying that a fox can turn into a human form by growing 9 tails. The Marquis shook his head and said, "The animal taming in the palace has seen it. This is an ordinary snow fox, less than 2 months old. Your Majesty, I also mentioned a few words. Don't worry about violating taboos. Fu Niuer can keep this little fox as a playmate in the future on normal days. Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying might still object, but they just when the little girl suddenly became diligent, this little fox playmate came just in time. They had already nodded before waiting for the good news to be answered. Old Mrs. Li quickly responded, okay, stay and play with Fu Niuer. Tao Hongying asked, what should I feed the little fox? Isn't it difficult to raise it? The Marquis smiled and replied, raw meat, eggs, bird eggs, and fruits are all fine. But the fox is still young, so it would be better to feed him some rice porridge and minced meat. Shui Yun immediately went to the kitchen to prepare, while Shui Ling followed Ji Yin, chirping and teasing the little fox. Ji Yin wanted to have a cat in her previous life, but unfortunately she fell ill and died, and she never kept one again. She had no resistance to this furry little animal. At this moment, her face turned red with joy, and she shouted happily, Father, does the little fox have a name? You are its owner, pick one for it, the Marquis said with a smile. Ji Yin held her fat chin and thought for a moment, the little fox's fur is snow white and its eyes are ember. Why not call it, Sanjo? Everyone burst into laughter. After listening to the first two sentences, they thought the good news would be named something like Snowball or Ember, but they didn't expect it to be Sanjo. Is it to emphasize that the little fox has 3 tails? Then let's talk about coat color and eyes first. Purely misleading. Ji Yin played a little prank, smiled proudly, knocked on the cage and said, Santiago, did you hear, from now on you will be called Santiago. Follow me well, let's eat and drink spicy food together. The little fox didn't know if he understood it, so he rolled his eyes disdainfully, and finally turned his head away, facing the good news with his buttocks. Everyone couldn't stop laughing. Ji Yin, a little pistachio, finally met someone who didn't like her, and her position as the group favorite was in jeopardy. After chatting for a while, Mr. Ho and Li Laosi were about to set off. The emperor has agreed to go on an expedition. These days, as long as there is any movement on the barbarian side, the border guards will cross the river at any time. Everyone is a little reluctant to part with each other. They don't know how long it will be before we see each other again. Especially Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying, they wanted to take all their belongings with them. The clothes, shoes, socks, and food items that were prepared before were all packed and handed over to the soldiers. Ji Yin hugged Daddy, feeling a little regretful. I was just playing around before, so why didn't I look through the space and collect some good materials to make another weapon for my father? Fortunately, the Marquis got a good bow from the palace, and the saber issued by the army was not too bad either. Li Laosi didn't think anything of it at all. He put his daughter down and asked his mother to take care of herself. The Marquis picked up the fat girl and said the same thing, when my adoptive father comes back, I will bring you something good. Ji Yin hugged her adoptive father's neck and suddenly felt sad. Zinken, Zindu, and even the whole Tianhui regard the foster father as their patron saint. But no one knows how hard and dangerous it is for him to travel all year round, with life and death hanging by a thread. She couldn't help but pat her adoptive father's heavy shoulder and said, Father, you have worked hard. Fu Niuer will help you from now on. These words were a bit confusing, but the Marquis understood it. He was stunned for a moment, smiled slowly, and nodded solemnly, okay, my foster father will wait for that day. Dear friends, I'm sorry for the late update today. There is a plot that is a bit stuck and the writing is a bit slow. The 4th update is over, and we have started to return to the 3rd update every day to let Huahua take a breath and rest. It's the last day of the month. Look at Huahua's hard work to update for 8 days, vote for Huahua. Don't be left behind by giving good reviews, 0.5 stars or good points, and urging updates. I love you. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 499. Chapter 499 New Upgrade Changes. The sound of horse hooves beat on the path, bringing up a puff of dust and smoke, and taking away everyone's concerns. Until the Marquis, Li Laosi, and others disappeared, Mrs. Li said, "Go back, there are not many barbarians left who have been killed. Even if they go out to fight, they will come back soon. These words are meant to comfort my family, and even more so myself." Jiyan quickly grabbed her grandma's hand and begged, "Grandma, Santiago is still hungry. Grandma can give it 2 eggs, okay?" Sure enough, Mrs. Li laughed and scolded her granddaughter, "Your adoptive father is not giving you a little friend. He is inviting an ancestor to our family. There are many families who don't have enough to eat, and our family still needs more. Feeding eggs to foxes is really unethical." Jiyan smiled and pushed her grandma towards the courtyard. Everyone looked at her and started laughing. Old Mrs. Li has always been a sharp-tongued person. She said she was reluctant to part with it, but in the end she not only took the egg, but also took a piece of fruit. Sanjo Mianjian also has the attribute of being a foodie. After eating the eggs, he gnawed on the fruit, wagging his 3 tails happily from time to time, and occasionally chirping twice. I don't know if he was shouting, "It's delicious, it's delicious." Jiyan secretly stretched out her fingers and touched Santiago's tail. The furry touch made her smile and narrow her eyes. It happened that Mr. Wen had something to do and went to the city, so he called Li Laoer to accompany him. Li Laoer put off the trivial matters in the valley and was about to go out after changing into new clothes. Seeing his little niece walking around the little fox's cage, he said, "This cage is too small. When the second uncle comes back, I will help Sanjo buy a bigger cage." Jiyan quickly hugged her second uncle's arm and acted cute. "Second uncle, you'd better take care of your studious and diligent little niece first." Li Laoer couldn't stop laughing, and hurriedly knelt down to ask his niece, "Speaking of which, are there any snacks you want to eat? Didn't the emperor reward you with a shop the day before yesterday? When you get it back, you can eat as much as you want." "No, no," hearing the good news, his head was filled with black threads. "Isn't her reputation as a foodie too popular? Second uncle, I want a set of history books, preferably one that covers all major events from the hundreds of years before Tianwu to the present." Jiyan quickly made his request. As expected, Li Laoer was surprised, but he quickly reacted and praised, "Oh, do we, Fu Niuer, want to study history? My second uncle must support me, and I will definitely bring you a set when I come back." "Thank you, second uncle." "Second uncle is the best." Jiyan quickly sent a rainbow fart, which made Li Laoer smile. Tao Hongying carried the basket and was going to the valley. She wanted to pick some vegetables on the way back. When she heard this, she said, "This girl knows how to spend money. Any book in the calligraphy and painting shop costs 2 or 3 taels of silver. History books, it's so thick, I'm afraid I won't be able to buy it if I don't have 5 or 6 taels." As she said that, she was about to go back to the house to get the money. Li Laoer quickly stopped her and said, "I'm not short of these few taels of silver. If I don't have enough in the future, I'll ask you for more." He ruffled his niece's hair, then met Mr. Wen and left. My mother's words reminded me of the good news. Originally, the third uncle in the family had the least income every year. Now that the third uncle has opened a canteen, there is money flowing every day, and he earns a lot all year round. On the other hand, the second uncle only had a sum of money for the earl's salary at the end of the year, but half of it was distributed as grain, leaving half, only 200 or 300 taels. In ordinary people's homes, 200 or 300 taels would be enough to live comfortably and richly. As an official, there are too many favors, and the second uncle's expenses are getting bigger and bigger. This little money is really not enough. From now on, she will look for an opportunity to find a way to make money for her second uncle. Moreover, this financial path should be profitable and elegant, conducive to gaining popularity, and can also develop connections for the second uncle and the family. Chess club. A calligraphy and painting shop. Jian had no idea for a while, so she put the problem aside for the time being, and then called Shui Ling to help carry the little fox to the family yard. Since his adoptive father is not at home, the family yard has become Jian's private little world. Although Zhang Feng and Zheng He live in the opposite house, they are away most of the day. The remaining Dong Mei and Yeshan had few words to begin with and were her trustworthy allies. She thought it would be most convenient to make some small moves here. Seeing that the sun was over the head, Grandma He went back next door to help cook. Jian took the little fox into the wing, and Dong Mei also chased Shui Ling away. Then she took a sewing basket and sat at the door of the wing, guarding it herself. Jian heard the words outside the door, and then he took the little fox into the space with confidence. The little fox was still nibbling on the fruit, but suddenly he was moved to another place, and he was so surprised that he dropped the fruit. The two little eyes are wide and round, perfectly interpreting the sentence, "What does it mean to suddenly open the door to a new world?" Jian laughed so hard that she pulled its little tail and started to make a three-part agreement with it. "Santiago, I will let you out to play. You can go to the tree to eat fruits, or you can go to the hen house to eat eggs." But we agreed, "You are not allowed to harm the nursery and vegetables, and you are not allowed to kill chickens, ducks, and rabbits, otherwise, I will never let you in again, do you understand?" The little fox didn't know if he understood it, but he just opened the cage door anxiously, as if he was eager to explore the new world. In this small world, Jian is the absolute king, so she is not worried about the little fox getting lost. Soon, she opened the cage door. The little fox got out of the cage and disappeared without a trace in a swish. Jian didn't care. After feeding the chickens, ducks, geese, and pigs, she hurriedly went to see the cabbage seeds that had been sprinkled last night. In less than a day, the cabbage seeds had turned into small vegetable seedlings with 2 leaves. This speed is not comparable to that of the nursery, but it is definitely 4 or 5 times that of ordinary fields outside. Jian is extremely satisfied. Her 5 acres of private land can now be treated as 25 acres. As long as you are not lazy, you can harvest 5 times in space in 1 year. If they all grow grain, it will be enough to feed the whole family for 5 years. If you are willing to endure hardships, work hard, and plan well, then this will be another cornucopia. The good news was overjoyed. She saw the little fox lying on the apple tree and eating a lot. She also picked one and went to the front yard while munching. Last night, she didn't have time to investigate carefully. Now that she has time, she wants to take a closer look. This space upgrade should not only change the 5 acres of private land at the back. In the temporary warehouse built against the wall in the front yard, there were 2 freezers, and she stored a lot of food. In the past few years, the food has not gone bad, as if time has expired in the freezer. What she was like before she traveled through time has always been like that now. It has never changed, but it is only limited to the small space of the freezer, and the rest is normal. After this upgrade, time in the entire front yard magically stopped like a freezer. This morning, the half bowl of hot porridge she secretly brought in was still hot to the touch, but in the 3 main rooms 1 step away, it was different. The river of time suddenly flowed slowly. Jian can clearly feel these changes, but the specific details of the changes need to be explored slowly in the future. In short, what is certain now is that time has stopped in the front yard, and whatever is put in it can remain the same, but the living creatures will not be affected. The time in the 3 main rooms has slowed down. The time difference from that outside is yet to be determined. The vegetable gardens and private plots behind are used to grow food and vegetables, which grow 5 times faster than those outside, and the nurseries grow even faster. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 500. Chapter 500 The Impact of Dreams and Reality. The small space is divided into 4 parts, each part has its own time adjustment. Ji-Yin couldn't find where her adjustment device was, but she wasn't greedy either. Now, the functions of these 4 parts are enough for her to use, especially the 3 main rooms, which are simply an excellent cheating device for her to study. Perhaps, the space couldn't stand her laziness, so he used this to support her efforts. After shopping around, Ji-Yin had a good idea and decided to replan the space, so he wrote a list of the things he needed. Needless to say, Dongmei and Yushin are busy again. 3 pieces, 3 pieces. Ji-Yin planned to go out, but after calling Sanjiu several times, the greedy little fox pretended not to hear and hid on a branch next to the nursery. The 3 tails were made into whips, and they took turns lashing the little green snake's cage, as if they were sure that Ji-Yin could not do anything to it. I feel sorry for the little green snake, because it provoked someone, and suddenly such a vixen appeared, shaking it so hard that its eyes rolled. Ji-Yin put her hands on her hips and shouted loudly to scare the little fox, "Santiago, don't act stupid for me, come down quickly. If you don't come down, I will make a fox fur scarf." Sanjo's 2 little ears twitched, and the next moment, they drooped down, completely blocking the ears and eyes. Ji-Yin rolled her eyes angrily, and with a thought, the little fox appeared directly in her hand. The next moment, he stepped out of the space and put the little fox back into the cage. From beginning to end, complete in one go. The little fox was so frightened that his eyes almost popped out. He bit his tail and ran around in the cage, his mind in chaos. What happened? Why did it change places again? Did you just dream? Ji-Yin kept laughing evilly and ignored it. She went out to look for Dongmei and told her what she wanted to buy. After lunch, Ji-Yin took a nap for half an hour and then went to the back street to learn needlework from Madame Hui. The fat white children raised by the twins of Hui's mother's family are holding each other's feet and chewing them happily. Aunt Wu was helping to look after her, making her giggle from time to time. She has been sick and weak for many years, but unexpectedly she regained her vitality after giving birth to a pair of sons and grandsons. Although Aunt Wu was busy and troubled day and night, her face looked much better than before and her body became stronger. It has to be said that people live one breath at a time. With the energy and spirit lifted, the disease will be cured without taking any medicine. Huaniyang was teaching Ji-Yin how to sew purses, and she was very happy. In fact, she could see that this child was smart, but he just liked to be lazy and was not interested in needlework. But today, the child actually sat firmly and studied patiently and seriously. Although the stitching technique was still poor, at least the hand was no longer pricked. After 2 or 3 years of learning, simple cutting and sewing should not be a problem. That's good. The Li family doesn't expect Ji-Yin to make their own clothes, shoes, and socks in the future. However, if you don't have too many skills, you can't go wrong by learning more skills. As the sun set, Li Lauer came back from outside, bringing with him several thick history books and a large wicker cage. Sanjo has a new home, but he is still unhappy. No one knows that its little heart was shattered by the impact of its little master. I just thought it had changed places and was not familiar with the environment yet. Tao Hongying cooked herself, made porridge for Santiao, and added some roast chicken brought back from the restaurant. As a result, a few pieces of chicken, 2 chicken bones and tripe, 3 chickens immediately started to jump to life again. The family members looked at it very funny. They all said that the kind of pets are like the kind of owners. After dinner, Ji-Yin went to take a bath, taking Santiago with him. Although Sanjo is only 2 months old, he still has the natural smell of foxes, so it would be better to wash him. After finishing her bath, she sat by the hot spring pool to dry her hair. And he sat beside her and read to her, reading the history book she had just bought. Grandma, he doesn't know why the little master is suddenly interested in history, but it's a good thing to like reading, and it's better than being naughty. Shui Ling and Shui Yun gave Sanjiao a bath. After Sanjiao was washed, their clothes were soaked, so they simply washed them all. When we got out of the ear room, the master and servants, plus the little fox, were all clean and fragrant. In this case, Jiyan wanted to put Santiao's cage in the house, and Grandma he didn't object. So, after everyone went to sleep, the little fox experienced another impact between dreams and reality. When she got up early in the morning, Jiyan yawned while washing herself, but she had a smile on her face. Learning the cheating artifact is indeed magical. She went in and out 7 or 8 times that night, and finally figured out that the time difference between the outside and the space cabin was 10. It's 10 times as much. In other words, after living in the space hut for 20 hours, only 1 hour actually passed outside. To be honest, it's a pity to give this cheating device to a lazy guy like her. If it could be given to her brothers, they wouldn't have to stay up late to study every day. However, she is working hard now, she has to work hard. Sanjo has been following his little masters tossing inside and outside all night, and he has become numb. It can switch skillfully between dream and reality. Furthermore, it dared not ignore the call of its little master. Because the fur on the back of its neck still hurts. No matter where it is hiding, the little master's devil claws can accurately catch it. On this day, as usual, I read and learned rules in the morning, and learned needlework in the afternoon. However, at dusk, Li Yong hurried back. Tomorrow the army will go out for battle. He wanted to see his wife and children again, so he and the Marquis took half a day off and stopped by to let his family know. No one expected that the expedition would come so early and in such a hurry. They thought it would take at least half a month. At the dinner table of the Li family, there were 7 or 8 people, old and young, from Mrs. Li to Jiyan. None of them had any appetite and ate very little. The sword has no eyes, and the battlefield is ruthless. No one can guarantee that Mr. Ho, Li Laosi, and Li Yong will all come back safely. But they can't stop him, and apart from worrying, no one can do anything to help him. This night, Jiyan specially pestered Grandma to sleep with her. At 5 o'clock, before dawn, the sound of horse hooves in the back street rang, and both the grandfather and grandson opened their eyes. After being silent for a long time, Mrs. Li sighed, gently held her granddaughter in her arms, reached out and patted her back. Just sleep a little longer, everything will be fine, don't worry. Well, Grandma sleeps too. I responded to the good news, nestled in my grandma's arms, closed my eyes, but couldn't fall asleep. On this day, she only learned needlework for half the afternoon. Then she took Shui Ling and Shui Yun and went around to Dr. Zhang to play until dark before returning home. Time will never stop because of the joys and sorrows of the world. The sun rises and the moon sets, and 2 months have passed in the blink of an eye. The season has officially entered midsummer from the warm and comfortable days of spring. This year is hotter than in previous years, and there is not much rain. The crops in the fields are barely enough to survive, and they look a little wilted from a distance. Only the cicadas on the tree were the happiest, shouting at the top of their lungs and adding a bit of irritability to the summer. The sun had just risen 3 o'clock in the sky, and the sky seemed to be on fire. People who were exposed to the sun were hiding in their houses and did not want to come out. The small river outside the new village is no longer as abundant as it used to be. There is only a trickle flowing on the river bed, which looks extremely pitiful. At this time, all the men, women, and children in the new village were out in force under the scorching sun. Driving a carriage, carrying a pole, and a bucket, they fetched water from wells and sent it to the melon fields. Even when the school children were on holiday, they all brought wooden basins and pottery basins, fetched water from the carriage, and then, staggering under their feet, sent it to each melon vine and watered it carefully. Everyone exposed to the scorching sun had chapped lips, flushed face, and even skin on their shoulders, but no one complained. End of this chapter.